it. I don't know. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Darnell from the Bipartisan Policy Center. So this morning we got a chance to hear about civic engagement and relationships. And they gave us hope, and they talked about how we really can all work together. And now it's time to talk about elections. So I'd like to introduce the moderator for our first election panel this morning, and that is Selena Zito. And she is from the Washington Examiner, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and the New York Post. And so with that, let's welcome Selena to the stage.
I'm so excited I didn't trip. Hi, I'm Selena. I'd like to introduce Nick Troiano from Unite America, David Thornburg from Ballot, Pennsylvania, and the former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland and the board member of the Bipartisan Policy Center.
It's a
Did I get that right?
Big space.
Awesome.
So,
hi, everybody. So
I'm going to check out the Kirby. I'm not guessing there's many people in there.
So I'll tell you a little bit about myself, not too boring, but just a little bit about myself, and then we will get this started. My name is Selena. I live in Pittsburgh, which is, as I fondly call, the Paris of Appalachia, and because we're the largest city in Appalachia. But so it's the other end of the state. I do cover national politics. I also cover culture, and I've been covering it all of this century. I approach my coverage in a very different way. I don't fly, and not because I'm afraid. And I also don't take highways. So when I came out here yesterday, I drove all across US 30 in our state until I got to King of Prussia, and then I got into a crazy, crazy traffic jam. How do y'all do it? And I don't stay in major hotels, so I usually try to stay in like a bed and breakfast. So the first person I meet in a town is a small business person, and they always know where all the bodies are buried. And I try to approach covering news that way, from a very granular level, from what's going on in a community. And that's what I do, and I have 3 jobs: Washington Examiner, New York Post, and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And now we're on to talk about our very wonky, but also incredibly important aspects of what each of these gentlemen do on our panel. And I'm going to just start with you, Nick, and you just sort of tell people what you do, what you're working on, and why it's so important, in particular in Pennsylvania. I think this panel should actually be called "What's the Matter with Pennsylvania?" But go ahead.
No. Sport now. Really.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you, Selena. Thank you for making the 7-hour drive to be here, too.
It was actually 9.
9. So I'm Nick Troiano. I run Unite America. We're a national nonpartisan organization working to foster a more representative and functional government. And the way that we do that is by focusing on the systemic causes of polarization and advancing election reforms that can really change the incentive structure of our politics. I'm actually from Pennsylvania in Milford, and got involved politically, went to DC to study government. And the first thing I learned in Government 101 was from a political scientist named David Mayhew, who said that members of Congress are single-minded seekers of re-election. And once you understand that, you kind of understand the rest of politics, because the operative question is, what does it take to get re-elected? And in our political system today, what it takes to get re-elected is the opposite of what we want our leaders to do. Right? We want them to work across the aisle and solve problems, but that actually imperils them from their own party, and they'll get punished. And the primary system, as we'll talk about today, is a major reason why. I mean, imagine any company where the more likely you were to do your job was the more likely you were to lose your job. That company wouldn't be very functional, right? That's where our country is at today. So we see the incentive structure as the problem. We see the problem not just as who we elect, but how we elect. And I came to this because I got very involved in fiscal issues 10 years ago, around the time of the Simpson-Bowles Bipartisan Commission. and was trying to get young people more involved in that issue. And what we found was we can present all the good ideas to members of Congress all day long, but they had no incentive to work with each other. And the failure of that commission, the government shutdown in 2013, is what led me to not only become an independent, but run for office as an independent for Congress at 25. And up close, I saw how this...
I covered him.
And I saw up close just how this system, the barriers to entry, and the unlevel playing field, and became committed ever since then to how do we fix this. And so that's what sent me on a journey to Unite America, and we're working across the country now at the state level to advance these nonpartisan reforms. And I'm very excited because that's the reason why I'm optimistic, is that we have the tools to do it. You know, when the framers gave us our Constitution, there were no parties mentioned in it. They didn't say how we had to elect our officials. They gave us the tools, though. And part of those tools was that every state gets to determine the time, place, and manner of our elections. So that clause allows us to now work at the state level to fix the system, and I'm sure we'll talk more about what those solutions look like.
David, and I should reinforce this. Everything that each one of these gentlemen are doing is very granular and very important. And all of the best things that have ever happened in this country has started on a very granular grassroots level. It doesn't happen fast, and nothing ever does really in our form of government. But everything that each one of these individual people are doing is incredibly important in making it more, and I shouldn't say accessible, that's the wrong word, but getting people more engaged and wanting to show up to vote. And I think that's the most important. David?
Thank you, Selena. And by the way, no objection here if we end up with a Pennsylvania-focused conversation. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh. I lived in Philadelphia for about 30 years. And my career has been in a number of civic leadership roles to try to improve the economy of Pennsylvania and now to improve our governance. I come through that naturally. My father was a great governor, two-term Republican governor in Pennsylvania back in the late 70s and early 80s. I have to say, politically, it feels like a long, long, long time ago because things were very different then. My current pursuit is to chair an initiative called Ballot PA, which is a project of the venerable Good Government Group, the Committee of 70, which I used to run, with a simple mission, which is to end closed primaries in Pennsylvania, to make sure that every voter gets to vote in every election. Right now, we have 1.3. Sounds like we've got a sympathetic audience. We have 1.3 million independent voters. We're one of 9 states that completely closes our primaries to those independent voters. And sadly, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, once you drop down below the statewide races, almost all local, county, and legislative races are essentially in the primary, somewhere around, depending on where you are, 75%. So 75% of the time for those, I'm sorry, 100% of the time for those races, we're shutting out 1.3 million independent voters. And this is the number that really made me stand up and take notice, and I hope it does to you as well. We know from solid survey research that 1 in 2 veterans identify as political independents. 1 in 2 veterans, 50% of the men and women who serve this country and put their lives on the line. If they have the misfortune to come home to Pennsylvania, we then shut them out of the polls. There are 800,000 veterans in Pennsylvania. Ballpark, there could be 400,000 men and women who serve this country that we deny access to the ballot in primary elections. So for that fact alone, and we could talk about the impact on democracy and so forth, it is long past time that we end this really unfortunate practice. So I'll stop there. I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about.
To David's point, I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh, and for 40 years of my life, if you were not registered as a Democrat, you really didn't have any say in the vote for mayor. So if you were registered for Republican or registered for as an independent, your voice was left out because that vote or that primary election was always decided in the spring. I mean, after the May primary, sometimes it's in April, but after the May primary, it was over. We already knew who won, and it happened in the Democratic primary. And also, I think, and I could be wrong, but I also think this causes a malaise in people showing up. I mean, I think in our last mayoral election, 13% of the people that are eligible to vote showed up. People are just not engaged because of the way our system is set up. Do I have that right?
Yeah, just to throw it out there, and I think this will open up the door to further conversation. We're in a time where we're subject to what folks have called the tyranny of the minority. We have a small number of people, because of the way we've structured primaries generally, who are driving the agenda. They tend to be loud and angry and more extreme. So this is not, in some ways, an accident. It's a function of the way we've structured the process.
Michael?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Michael Steele, former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, former Chairman of the Republican National Committee. I am deeply rooted in the experience of American politics, having been involved from a very early age and watched the city I grew up in, Washington, D.C., change in a manifest way that, to the point today, I don't recognize it. A lot of my experience as a grassroots activist, having learned my politics, outnumbered by my political rivals, not a whole lot of Republicans walking around D.C., and so certainly not when I was growing up. But I learned the idea that this system works because we're involved in it. The system works because we, the people, the most powerful words of all the words written in our documents, our founding documents, start with we, the people. They gave us the power. They didn't give it to an institution. They didn't give it to one individual. They gave it to everyone in this room, everyone online, and everyone in this country. My frustration is what you don't do with it. How complacent and complicit we, the people, have become in allowing the individuals that we've elected to turn this whole thing upside down. I hope you're here because you're fed up. I hope you're here because you want to take a hold of democracy and shake it a bit and remind each one of us why this matters. It matters not because, oh, it's something to do on a Friday. It matters because tomorrow, under this current path, is not guaranteed for this country. So for me, a lot of the work that I'm involved in the number of organizations that I work with, I chair the U.S. Vote Foundation, all about getting people access to the information, the basic information you should know to go vote, right? Working with Nick at Unite America, a lot of organizations that are out there pushing and pulling the work we're doing at the Bipartisan Policy Center to put policy back in play so that we can have big debates about the minutia of climate and healthcare and things like that. But at the end of the day, it boils down to who we're sending to Washington, who we're sending to our state capitol, who is our county executive, who is on our city commissions, right? We control that. And I just wish we just stop acting like we don't have that control. I wish we just wake up and realize, you know what? You have wasted your time in office. You have wasted our time watching you waste your time. Right? Because nothing's getting done. Right now, Congress is running and operating under a continuing resolution. This fiscal year ends in 3 weeks. We don't have a budget. We have no plans. We have no idea. We've got one party, my party, saying, give us the power, and then we'll tell you what we're going to do. All right, so how many of you would pay a plumber to come in your house and then decide what he's going to do? Would you do that? So if you wouldn't do that with the plumber, why the hell are you letting people in Congress ruin the opportunities for generations by pretending they're doing something. So for me, this granular fight is not about the mechanics. It's about what we, the people, are deciding to do going forward. There's an election coming up in three and a half weeks. What are you going to do about it? You're going to let the tale of polls and the tale of fear and the tale of concern people have about the gas prices? Is that going to wag the constitutional and democratic dog? Or are you going to reestablish the foundations by making it very clear why we're here and why this needs to work? It's not about Republicans, Democrats, independents, and all the partisan stuff. It's about how we reconfigure this system going forward so that we each have a stake in it. To the very important point, every citizen not just has a right to vote, but has an obligation to participate. Obligation to participate. Because the day could come soon enough when you think you're going to go to the polls and they will have moved it 10 miles from your home and now you got to catch a bus or you just can't get there. You think you're going to go vote and all of a sudden that line that took you 2 hours is going to be 12 days. What are you going to do? Who are you going to go to? Because the elected leadership are letting you down. And so we need to take hold of this. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm glad you're here, to shake it up a little bit and to make sure that we start getting it right, because, damn, it is wrong right now.
I think that all of you look like you've been around, not been around.
I was like, what kind of convention is this again? Am I in the wrong place?
Most of you look like you've been around at least since the 2006 midterms, right? When the Republicans lost to the Democrats. And everyone kept talking about in that election, and I've seen it every cycle since, because that's really when we've started this big back and forth wave. And it's not that when Democrats were sent into office, they misread the reason that they were sent back in. And that's why they made a series of mistakes that caused them to be sent back out. Politicians have this belief when you give them the power and/or the majority that you like them again, that you love them. It's not that. It's just that people weren't unhappy with the Republicans. But the Democrats misread what you sent them. The same is true in 2010 and so the Republicans are out of power. The Democrats get in power, and what do? They misread why you sent them, so they give Republicans back the power. We're pretty much on the same precipice again. We're about to give the Republicans power again, and if they misread it again, then in about 2 to 4 years, we're going to have another midterm. And I think that is sort of what we are watching as people that participate in the process. And why we become so unhappy with whoever we send to power. Now I'm going to talk to you. I've covered 2 of the races that have ranked choice voting: the New York mayor's race, and I went up to Alaska and covered the Alaska at-large congressional race. And the first time I covered ranked choice voting, is anybody here familiar with it? I was like, why are you making me do algebra? This feels really hard. This feels really hard. But Nick, you're gonna tell me why it's not hard, tell the audience why it's not hard, but also explain why it's important.
Sure. I'll start with why it's important, which is that there are real solutions to what we call the primary problem. And the primary problem in our politics today, to David's point, is that a very few voters are effectively electing the vast majority of our leaders. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first reason is that the vast majority of congressional seats in our country are considered safe for one party or another. Gerrymandering plays a part of that, but a lot of it is the urban-rural divide that we have. So this election cycle will be the least competitive elections of our lifetimes, because 85% of congressional districts fall within those safe seats. So there's an election in 3.5 weeks, but really, the election for 369 districts is already over. They're decided, and they're decided in the primary. And the second problem is that those primaries are very low turnout. This cycle, we've seen about 19% on average voters participate. A lot of people don't show up because it's early in the season, they're not paying attention, but a lot don't show up because they can't. 12 million independents are blocked out of the primaries across the country. And the majority of states restrict participation based on party affiliation. And while 19% are turning out, really it's only the people voting in the majority party's primary that are actually casting ballots that matter. So the research that we've done at United America has shown that at the end of the day, in 2022, only 8% of voters nationally will have effectively elected 85% of our leaders in Congress. 8%. That's not government of the majority. It's not even government of the minority. It's government of the minority of the minority. And we shouldn't stand for that in a place that we call a democracy. So what do we do about that? And that's where there are real solutions at play. And Alaska is, in real time, demonstrating how. Because in 2020, a majority of voters in Alaska passed a ballot initiative that did two things. It first replaced both parties' primaries with a single nonpartisan top 4 primary. And so in this election, every candidate gets to participate, regardless of party affiliation, and every voter does as well.
How many people participate? I just want people to understand how many people participated in running.
Yes, so there was a special House election. Debbie Young passed away, and I think there were something like over 50 candidates who ran for his seat. Which
I actually think is a really good thing. Here's why. I think one of the things that people often complain to me about when I'm covering is we don't inspire people to run for numerous reasons, which means then we don't get the best people running. So if you've got all these people running, I think that's a good thing because you have all these choices, even though it's like algebra.
Right. And by the way, in the current system in most states, who even sees a path to winning through a party primary? So it limits a lot of candidates from running. So in Alaska, you have this nonpartisan primary. You get to vote for your favorite in the primary. The top 4 finishers go to the general election. So that was the first part of the reform. The second part is what Selena's talking about on ranked choice voting. And in this general election where you have 4 candidates, you want the person who wins to do so with a majority of support, not just a plurality. And so that's where ranked choice voting, which is also known as an instant runoff, comes in. So you go into the voting booth, and it's not algebra, it's actually just 1, 2, 3, and you have the option of doing it. Okay, so who's your first, second, or third preference candidate? And in the special House election, there are actually 3 candidates on the ballot. You had Sarah Palin, Nick Begich, and Mary Peltola. And no one got a majority of the vote. And so what happened, it was the person in third place, like it would happen in a normal runoff, was dropped. And the supporters of that candidate's second place preferences were counted. And that's what put Mary Peltola over the majority threshold, and she won. And I'll just wrap by saying that this was the most participatory and most representative election that we've seen this year. Alaska had the highest turnout primary. Every voter that cast a ballot had their voice counted. And it produced a candidate who resonated with the majority of Alaskans, not just the 8% in one party or another. So can't we just all vote like Alaska now?
And by the way, if you've never been to Alaska, go in June or July, and it's the most beautiful state. I've been to all, no, that's not true. I've been to 49 states. I've not been to Hawaii because I can't drive there. Also not a beach person. And there's a lot of beaches in Hawaii, I've heard. But Alaska is an amazing state.
Selena, let me just pipe in there. This question has come up as we've wandered around Pennsylvania because ranked choice voting is out there.
Right.
And I'll point out, if any of you are Philadelphians or Philadelphia Quakers, it's very Quakerly. It's a consensus-driven model, right? You got to get at least 50%. But that's different. I look at that. The reform that we're after right now is what I'll call focusing on the denominator. This is focusing on the numerator.
Right.
You have to have 50% of all the people who vote. Our point is we have to expand the number of people who actually show up at the polls because, by the way, in my view, there is no more fundamental constitutional right in this representative democracy than your ability, the ability of everyone to cast a vote.
How many people cast a vote in the primary this year? Do you know what the percentage was? I can't remember.
Of 1.5 million.
But what's the
statewide.
percentage of the voters?
Well, there's about 9 million voting, so
Okay.
Do the math.
10%.
I can't do math. I hate algebra. I just said that. They told me there would be no math.
Actually, it was probably like 35%. It was extraordinary, but I could go into a riff. This was the only time in Pennsylvania history where voters had basically open seats to vote on up and down the ballot.
Yeah.
So it was extraordinary, but I think for that reason.
And I think the problem with our closed primaries is to the point that you've talked about and the point that I've talked about. Unless you are, in particular in our cities, unless you are a registered, mostly Democrat in this state, on the very city level, like who's going to represent you in the city, in the larger cities, your only choice is to vote, to be registered as a Democrat. So ballot PA, how does that expand it? Because the problem that happens in a lot of our primaries are mostly everybody here from Philly or from Pennsylvania?
No, that's all over.
Well, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Anyone from Alaska?
Hey! All right.
Yay!
Very good.
I hear it's beautiful.
I love Alaska until I found out how many bears there were when you went hiking.
I think for me, you put your finger on an important part of it is how do you expand the opportunity for more people to participate? So we're in this sort of cycle where voters are being told not to trust the system and not to participate, basically, or participate in a limited way. And the questions really boil down to how do we begin to break that cycle? How do we have that moonstruck moment where you just slap people out of it, right? And get them to recognize, no, okay, I can vote, I can access. When you see states taking aggressive measures to limit that access, that's again where I get back to we the people. How we respond to that matters, because they will do what they think they can get away with for as long as they can get away with it, as long as you let them. So the moment you rear up and say, no, we want to change the way we're doing this, that's when the politicians start to pay attention. We all know that if you want to get any politician excited, have more than 25 people call their office, right? They're like, oh, what's going on? What happened, right? All of a sudden, because typically citizen participation in this process is very small. It's very low. And I think a lot of this effort, particularly with our younger voters, is how do we help people appreciate the investment that they're making when they participate. I ask young voters all the time, do you pay tax? Well, I was speaking at a high school and a bunch of 11th and 12th graders, and I was asking them, you know, what they thought about voting, and they were like, eh. And then I said, how many of you have jobs, summer jobs or otherwise? And all these hands go up. I said, how many of you get paid at the summer jobs? And all those hands went up. I said, and how many of you pay taxes? And they're like, right? The hands went up. I said, so you're 16, but you can't vote, but you're still investing in the system. So they're taking money out of your paycheck. You're in the game. So while you may not be able to vote, you can surely make a noise. You can surely have something to say about what happens to your money, right? And so it's helping people understand that connection that they have to this system. It's real. And you don't have to, you know, be 40 years old with a, you know, an 8-hour-a-day job or whatever. You have a summer job as a young person, and they take money out of that check every week. You're invested in the system. And so that spans out for me to voting as well, right? You are invested in this system. So we should be, first off, making it a national holiday, right? Second of all, move it the hell out of November. Why are we voting at the darkest, coldest time of the year? because they don't want you to. Expand the primary system by all means necessary to get, what Dave said, get everybody in the game, because that's how you begin to change. But once those changes are made, folks, you got to play. You got to participate. And so we can begin to see how, for me at least, it's all kind of connected.
Well, I was told I was not allowed to be a nerd, but I will say I'm going to have one nerd moment and say the reason we vote in November is because of the harvest season.
Yeah, we're harvesting a lot now, right?
But,
yeah.
that's how that came to be. Yeah. I wanted to ask...
It's like daylight savings times, right?
Right.
So
go figure.
Don't get me started. Nick and David, I'm wondering if you could... so I believe... I'm probably wrong. Ranked choice voting is in Alaska. It's in New York. Maine? Is that it?
San Francisco. Yeah, it's in a couple dozen
cities,
right? 2 states right now, statewide, Maine and Alaska, and then 4 states on a bipartisan basis just passed it in their legislatures for local towns and municipalities to start using it on the local level. So
what's the goal? What's your goal? Just take everybody forward. What do you hope to happen?
Well, I would say that just a point of clarity here, which is ranked choice voting is part of a 2-part reform. The other really important part is the change in the primary system.
Right.
Right. And so from that perspective, there are 4 states right now with non-partisan primaries where everyone can participate and every vote matters. You have California, Washington, Louisiana, and Alaska. That means you have 8 U.S. senators who are no longer prisoners of the base of their party and the special interests that influence those elections. Our goal is to double those number of states in the next election cycle. So between 2022, where it's on the ballot in Nevada, and 2024, where other states are currently working on it. And what that will mean is that we can rebuild a coalition in the Senate to really get things done on the issues that we care about, because that's the cost of the current system. I agree with Michael that participation is important, but we can't just participate in the game. You have to change the game, because right now we don't have the levers to hold our leaders accountable when most districts, we don't have a choice between which candidates that we have, right? And so that's the end game, is to rebuild this coalition in the Senate that can actually get things done. But the costs, from my perspective, are so much greater after what we saw on January 6th. This isn't just about trying to find common ground on policy. It's a question of whether we can keep our republic. Because what we're seeing, especially on the right now, is that these primaries have become fast tracks for candidates who no longer believe in democracy, who are no longer willing to defend free and fair elections. There are 118 nominees who are from safe districts who will get elected in November. We know this already, who do not believe in the outcome of the last election. So this is an existential threat, the current primary system, and that's why I think we have to change it.
Here's a semi-rhetorical question. Nick can research it. When was the last time you heard someone being primaried from the center? Right? It doesn't happen, right? But let me just talk about our effort, because we want to make sure that folks in Pennsylvania understand what this is all about. What we're after is a very simple proposal that's targeted only to independent voters, that says if you are a registered independent in Pennsylvania, you get to choose the primary in which you participate. What Massachusetts has had forever, what New Hampshire's had forever, what Virginia's had forever. Colorado implemented something like this about 6 years ago.
Right.
So it is not, I've been in Pennsylvania long enough, as of you, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You know, we're not throwing the Hail Mary. But this is really important because, again, there's 1.3 million people who I think are just unfairly shut out of the process. We expand the pool, add the competition and the accountability that comes with that expanded pool. And it's a first important step that we can take forward.
Well, and to your point about veterans, you know, veterans are just intuitively independent thinkers when it comes to politics.
They're taught to be independent.
That's exactly right.
It's part of the culture. In fact, to me, that's the kind of citizenship we should all
That's
aspire
exactly
to.
right.
And I have to slip in a commercial. You're a Pittsburgher. We enlisted former Steeler great and Vietnam vet Rocky Blyer to be a spokesperson for this effort. I see a couple of head nods among folks who were
He used to be my neighbor.
Zone. Go to our website, ballotpa.org, and watch Rocky Bleier talk about this issue. And then if you don't have the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, we got to talk.
Yes, Rocky
It's
Bleier,
inspiring.
if you didn't know that this was a Vietnam veteran who was injured in Vietnam, came back to be a pretty good football player for the Steelers.
4 Super Bowl rings for anyone who's keeping
And
score.
it's just this amazing sort of aspirational man. Michael, what's next with you?
You know, right now the focus is going to be on you know, working voters to understand the impacts of this upcoming election cycle. Trying to, you know, working with a number of candidates around the country who are in the democracy space. Evan McMullen out in Utah is running an amazing campaign, which I believe is going to be a model for independent runs in the future. And so it's, for me, it's just being on the ground, very much like you are, you know, sort of talking to people and getting a sense of where the election's potential is going. But also, I tend to be much more of a long ball player, so I'm already starting to look at what the world begins to sound and feel like in February, March, April of next year, with a Republican-controlled House that is investigating Hunter Biden. And trying to stimulate that conversation, or impeaching Joe Biden, a Democratic Senate that is still tight at the margins, and a presidential cycle that begins to unfold literally the Wednesday morning after the election. We should all be thinking about that and getting a sense of why voting on Tuesday in November is going to be important. So, for me, it's just right now, just getting information in the hands of voters to fully participate as much as possible this coming November.
Real quick, starting with you, can you just tell people where they can find the work that you do at the...
Yep, U.S. Vote Foundation. So if you want to know your registration status, you want to get an idea of where your polling place is. Whatever information you want, we are an incredible resource. You can go to us.vote or usvotefoundation.org, either one, and put your name in, and everything you need to know about your district, your state, voting is going to be there for you. Please get the information, arm yourself with the information, and for younger voters, you know, share it and encourage your friends and comrades to do the same.
David?
I already said it, but I'm happy to say it again, ballotpa.org. You can go watch the Rocky Bleier video. You can, if you're a Pennsylvania, you can sign the online petition in support of our efforts. And I'll point out we have a very important committee vote in the State House coming up the end of this month. So if you're of a mind to support our efforts, we'd certainly encourage that. But we're going to stick with this issue and do everything we can to get it done.
Nick?
UniteAmerica.org is the website. We're supporting dozens of local and state campaigns for election reform around the country, so our job is to connect you to where you can plug in locally. If you're here in Pennsylvania, this is the best thing you can do. This is how we get to the ultimate goal of where we're going to go to fix our election system. And then secondly, primaryproblem.us gives you all the facts and figures about how the system is broken and how we can fix it.
Yeah, I've known all three gentlemen for a very long time, and they all do very unique and different work, but very important work. So I highly encourage you to do that. If you want to follow the work I do or follow me around the country, it's just my name, selinazito.com, and you can check out all the work that I do. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah. Oh, really?